good.
Hello, everyone, and welcome down to episode 126 of the Down South Photo Show with me, Brendan Waits, here in Ocean Grove, Victoria, Australia, and the guy on your other screen or in your other ear if you're listening to the podcast. It's Cam Blake in Hobart, Tasmania, Australia. Hello, Cam.
Hello, Brendan. How are you on this beautiful, fine evening?
It's winter, isn't it?
Bloody oath, it's winter. It's
freaking
cold as shit.
Winter has bit.
Yeah, it has. I was just talking to Mum before in good old sunny Greensboro, and she played golf today, and she said it was the coldest game of golf she's ever played.
Yes, it was rather fresh out on the links. I managed to find myself out there this afternoon as well, which was nice for a change to get out of the shop. And instead of making rectangles, I made a few pars. I didn't make any birdies or anything, you know.
That's okay. Yeah, it is cold, but it's good though. I don't mind the cold. You get different photo opportunities with frost and a bit of cloud and fog and stuff like that.
From that point of view, it's always good for a change.
We're a photo show.
We are. Oh, that's right. And also a beautiful segue into our winter photo comp, which is entering its last couple of days. So when this goes out, which is going to be on Friday, there will only be 2 days left of June for you to submit your photos via our Facebook page. And Cam,
that's a good one.
Cam tells me that there's plenty of juicy goodness in amongst that lot. So
I've been away for a few days, as we'll probably talk about. But since I've come back, there's some interesting ones. So
good. We like interesting. We like different. The theme is winter, so it's very, very broad. So get your thinking caps on and see what you can come up with.
I'll give a shout out to one photo I've just come across. It looks like a nude man inside a refrigerator that's on fire. That's interesting.
Not sure why that has to be winter for that to happen, but anyway,
I don't know, but it's a good one. But there is some lovely shots. Real nice shots in there. So again, it's made it hard for us.
I've decided as well. I've made a executive decision that the winner of the comp that wins our monthly comp gets to be the header page on a header photo on our Facebook page for a week. How's that sound?
Well, if they're okay with that.
Well, of course they will be. We'll ask them.
What about the placeholder for the episode?
Oh well, hey, it could be the thumbnail. Is that what you're talking about?
Maybe. Just give him a car. Just give him a car.
Done.
Yeah.
Fine.
You know what I'm going way off track already, as we always do.
We are not giving away a car on the channel.
The other day I was at home and for some reason Pluck a Duck came up on my YouTube feed
again,
and my kids are like, "What the hell is that?" So I had to explain Pluck a Duck.
Yes.
God, it was funny. Anyway, we're not here. We're not Hey It's Saturday, but
can I give a shout out early in the pod?
Yeah, I saw there's a shout out. Is that who I think it's for?
That is Jeff. Yes. So hello, Jeff, who popped down to Ocean Grove, picked up a canvas print today, and had lunch with me.
You guys have a few lunch dates, don't you?
It's good. Well, Jeff's only in Melbourne, Australia, so it's just
should I be worried
over yonder. If you want to, about what?
Well, you and I used to have lunch dates a lot when I used to go down there. Now it's Jeff.
It's a bit harder for you to pop over for a lunch date, my friend.
That's true.
Yeah, we didn't go to the chicken shop.
Oh, you didn't?
No. Shout out to Lola Cato's sandwich bar.
Right.
How
is Jeff? Is he good?
Traveling very well. Tickety boo. Lovely man and a very keen photographer.
One of the good guys, isn't he, Jeff?
Yes. He's
does he listen to the show?
Yes, he does religiously.
Oh, okay. So we better say nice things then.
Yeah, that's right. He's definitely
not when you called him off air, but anyway.
That shout out went way too long.
Okay, sorry, Jeff.
Now, Cam, you've had quite the week.
Yeah, a little bit of a week. Well, half a week, I guess you could say. But few days. Last time we spoke, I was going to be going off to do a walk for a couple of days, 3 days. It didn't go all to plan because I was meant to leave the day that the podcast came out, which is last Friday. But I woke up feeling like crap. The day I was meant to leave, I woke up feeling, it's not the full on cold, but you just get those muscle aches and you're just like, something's coming. Yeah, and I went, okay. So I delayed a day and I left the next day and left on the Saturday. So I hiked in on Saturday, Sunday, and got back out Monday afternoon. I've had a bit of an adventure. Just decided to go off grid for a few days, and I do believe you told me to turn my phone off and go away at one stage when I messaged you.
Yes.
So I did that. So for those who don't know, Frenchman's Cap's part of the Franklin Gordon Rivers National Park or Wild Rivers National Park. It's almost in the smack bang middle of the World Heritage Area. It's a big quartz mountain face, and it's all surrounded by it's total Jurassic, all glacial sort of made mountains and lakes. Um, and if anyone's driven between Hobart and Launceston, you can see it on the side of the road as you go past. If the cloud's not out, it's this big sort of big dome. It looks pretty cool. But I booked this with Tassie. There's a lot of things you got to book in now. Like the walks where you used to be able to just get on and go. Now you got to book them online through a booking system, which is fine. And I booked that, and I didn't want to give up the booking. And then I had no friends to go with, so I decided to go on my own. Took my camera, carried a tripod for 3 days, didn't even take it out of the bag. Took three rolls of film. Took 3 rolls of film, and took. I got to the point I had my film camera because I wanted to take some film shots and my digital, and I got up to this big lookout, and I'm like, I've carried this bloody camera up here. I went through like a roll of Portra 160 just at one spot, just so I could say I'd actually wound something on 36 times
and done it.
Did a bit of bracketing and did a few different lens changes and stuff like that. But it was good. It was really hard. I'm nowhere near as fit as I once was or should be. There was a couple of not dark moments, but there was a couple of moments where I'm like, just turn around. You're too fat to do this. There was a couple of moments where I'm like, I just can't do this.
Yeah.
And I must
that was when you were only 500 meters in.
Tell you what, it wasn't far off that. I reckon it was about 5Ks in. I went, am I really going to do this? Because I'd done this walk before 10 years ago with a couple of mates, and we walked in and spent 2 nights in this hut. It just rained for 2 or 3 days. And I remembered that, but I didn't remember, like, I've done that many different walks. You don't remember the specifics of each walk.
Yeah.
But after about 5 kilometers into this one, I'm like, I remember this walk now. It's shit. I don't like it. And I didn't like it. So I was fighting a few demons there for a few Ks, but it's the first time I think in a long time that I've actually done a solo hike of any distance.
Yeah.
Usually it's like maybe half a day in and out or something like that or whatever. So it was good. Just me, myself, and I, and walking through this incredible wilderness. And I saw for the entire 3 days I was there, I saw 4 people. No, I saw 5 people. Sorry, 2 couples and a single, and that was it. And had the place to myself. It was
fantastic. Awesome. Nice. What's the accommodation like up there?
It's not 5-star. It's probably more like 1 million star. So it's huts similar to the overland track, but more of the older huts. So it's not the newer, fancier ones.
Yep.
So it's funny when I was just trying to get online here, and I said my computer was being slow, and you said put some more coal in. Well, the first hut has a potbelly coal stove heater.
Fantastic.
With a bin of coal bricks out the back that we had to get going. But Parks and Wildlife and all their wisdom don't leave you any firelighters, paper, matches, or any dry kindling to get it going. So the first night I got into there was a couple there. Shout out to Graham and Astrid, who may tune into the show. They were talking about it.
Hello, Graham and Astrid.
They were traveling down from Queensland, and they were going to go hike the top of Frenchman's Cap. I walked in, it was 3 degrees outside, but it was 17 degrees in the hut. So they had the coal fire going when I got there. The next night when I had the hut to myself and all the kindling and all the dry bits was gone, it was 2 degrees in the hut and -3 outside. So that was a bit shitty. But so the huts are good. Just bunks and a couple of tables, stainless steel tables that you can eat your meal on, with all those classic sort of camping platforms out the back.
Yep.
And they've got a new toilet block at Lake Vera, which is the first hut. The second hut, which is right down the bottom of Frenchman's Peak, I didn't go to that hut. I just stayed at the one hut and walked out the next day and did a half-day walk up to the Barren Pass and back. That is a newer hut. That's got heating and it's got a little bit more fancy bits going on there.
No, luxury.
Yeah. So, but one of the reasons I didn't go to that hut and one of the reasons I didn't walk to the top of the peak is there was just too much ice around. So a lot of reports from the couple of people I met on the way back, they said, look, we didn't get up the top. We had to stop halfway because of the ice. Even going around some of the side trips, it was just a bit icy and stuff like that. So I had a one little poo my pant moment on that classic duck board that we walk on, and with the chicken wire and stuff like that. And I kept saying to myself, okay, just stay on the chicken wire, we're all good. And then the chicken wire was there, but it was a bit shinier for some reason. It was like, and I thought maybe just it must have been a bit of water over the track. It was about that much of ice. And
Wow.
I've done the old like the Michael Jackson forward moonwalk for about a meter or two. And I'm like, whoa, that's ice, and sort of put me walking poles in and got myself some bearings. But apart from that, it was great fun, great walk. Got some really nice photos, I thought. Um, I think taking photos under that sort of pressure as such, like I guess being physically tired and being all on your own there, that's a different type of experience.
Yeah.
But it was good. Had fun. I made it out alive.
That's
Ankles
the
are
main thing.
sore. Every time I do a big hike, I get really bad issues with blisters under my toenails.
Ooh.
Ooh, not fun. So
No, wouldn't
today's
have thought so.
exercise was tune out now, folks, if you're weak of the stomach. But today's exercise was popping that blister under my toenail to relieve some pressure before the toenail decided to come off.
Goodness me.
Anyway, I hope you're enjoying your dinner, folks, on Friday
That's
night.
right. Yeah. Well, that's quite the adventure. That's good. But I admire that kind of stuff because I quite enjoy going out. I always try and take my photos on my own.
Yeah.
Obviously, unless I'm involved, with yourself on a workshop or something like that. But generally, I find the solitude to be quite gratifying. Isn't there something awesome about being in a forest or anywhere really, and all you hear is the click of the camera? That's really cool. That's
one of the
music for the soul, that stuff.
It is, absolutely. One of the best moments I had was walking around this Lake Vera to start the second day, climbing up this bloody massive hill. And the same thing, I was just walking along and there's a couple of nice reflections in the lake and some nice golden light in the morning. And I heard this click next to me off the track, and I'm like, oh, what's that? And there was a little spotted quoll just sitting on this
Right.
log. And he just looked
Fantastic.
at me, and I looked at him, and I went, oh. So I just stopped, and I slowly got my phone out and went to press record. Like, you press the camera thing a bit harder on the screen.
Yep.
So I didn't make any clicks, and I went to press record. And as I pressed record, he's gone, oh, okay, and it started taking off along this thing. So I got this video of him going through the forest for about, I don't know, 20 seconds of him skipping around and stuff.
Yeah.
That was really cool. And no one else in the world saw it. I was the only person to see that at that time. That's cool stuff.
Yeah, no, that's what it's all about. Fantastic.
Yeah.
So is your background from your walk?
No, it's not. It's because I couldn't get my background working because my computer's playing it. All right, you do yours then.
Oh, that's right. We've seen that background before.
Maybe while you're doing yours, I'll try see if I can break mine.
Here's a rural scene for you. I love this sort of stuff. So this was it was actually a little while ago up in the Mallee, fantastic part of the world in Victoria, and just headed out of my wife's hometown of Lake Boga, out the back blocks of Lake Boga. Just went for a drive and just wanted to try and find a rural scene, and found this awesome light falling on the big hay bales there. So never a dull moment out the back of Lake Boga. Nothing. What could possibly go wrong out the back of Lake Boga, Cam?
I don't know. What could go wrong at the back of Lake Boga?
Nothing. I do remember it was quite warm though. In fact, I would give anything for it to be back in that temperature right now. But
wow,
yeah,
yes.
I love doing that. I love when I'm in an area that I've been to 1,000 times, maybe just going down a road I haven't been down for a while and seeing how things look, and particularly with the eye towards getting some photos, it can always be quite productive, really. And
so
again,
that's not
on my own.
Yeah, they're not the same hay bales that we stopped for that other day, was it?
No.
That was it. What was that town called again? That little one out. Looks like an old
horror
state.
That was between Naya West and Chinkapuk.
Chinkapuk, that's right.
Yeah, it was on the way to Chinkapuk. So
that's
where we got those photos. Wow, your computer's working.
Something just changed. Holy shit. Well done, Apple. All right. So this is Frenchman's Cap. This is a big mountain, and it's got about a 200, 300 meter feet drop, I think it is, from the top down to the depth, I guess, down the bottom. So yeah, this is taken from Barren Pass. Now this is taken with a 150mm lens, so I'm actually still a long way away from it. But it's just a sheer cliff. There's no vegetation. It's just pure rock. You can see bits of ice sort of dripping down on that left-hand side and a bit of snow on the right-hand side. But yeah, pretty intimidating mountain to get up. You don't get up that way. You go around the back and sort of zigzag your way up, I think. But yeah, so that was a shot I got from the top of Barren Pass, which I was really happy to get up to. I've never been up to Barren Pass in visual. It was always under cloud. So yeah, it was good. But yeah, just a stunning countryside. It's just nuts.
Yeah, that's quite unique, that mountain range behind you. It's sort of
got
a different look about it, hasn't it?
It's definitely, it's not that dolerite mountain that you normally see in Tassie. It's that quartz sort of granite type of stuff. But it's just a big, empty, bare rock. Like, it's really just stands above everything else. It's above the forest line. Nothing grows there.
Yep.
And so it just where I took this shot from, to give you a bit of an idea how high I was, I could see the West Coast ocean from where I was.
Wow.
Looking out to the west coast of Tassie. So it's up, it's in the middle, and it's up out high, and you can see a fair way from the top. So sadly, real sad, a young man from Hobart died here about 2 weeks before I went. Not 100% sure what happened, but he'd taken the wrong path off the Frenchman's Cap, and unfortunately came to his demise.
Oh, that's not good.
It wasn't good, no. And it was really, really weird, because every hut has a book you can sign when you come in.
Yep.
And you always go in there and see who was there the day before or whatever. And there was a couple of stories in there. And as I was flicking back a few days, like this is like only a couple of weeks ago, there was an entry from a couple that was staying at Lake Vera who woke up at 2 o'clock in the morning because the SES rescue people came into that hut. They walked in that night on their way to go and help retrieve this young man.
Wow.
So they woke up in the middle of the night with this SES team coming into the hut, trying to get all prepared for what they were doing. So shout out to those guys who put their lives at risk. And
it's a tough gig, that one.
Tough gig. But if you went back another day in the book, there was an entry by this young bloke saying, "Tomorrow I'm really excited. I'm going up Frenchman's Cap." And
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's not for the faint-hearted, but you got to be careful. You got to respect. Like I said, I don't know exactly what's happened, but you got to respect the nature and the wilderness where you are. And sadly, something has terribly gone wrong there. And
that's no good at all.
But a couple of days before that, or maybe in a couple of months before that, just to give you a little bit of lightheartedness on that, there was a group that went down the Franklin River. So you can actually walk to this peak from the Franklin River. And they lost their boat. They didn't break their boat. Their boat got sucked into a rapid and just completely disappeared. They had 150 kilos of gear that they spent 5 days hauling up over this mountain and back out to the car park where I was. And the story of these 4 guys in this book is hilarious. One of the guys, it's almost like they've all done the little individual entry of what each day was. And one guy's entry was, "Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming." That's all it was. And then the people that I met in the hut, we both read this at the same time, looked at each other like, why wouldn't you just leave your gear there, take what you need and walk out? Like, why try and lug 150 kilos of gear over some of the most rugged lands? Well, I don't know. But so, there's the difference between what can be a lot of fun and what can be real tragic. So
there's a fine line sometimes.
Yeah. And you know what? It's just unlucky for that young man to do what happened. But you just never can take Mother Nature for granted, I don't think.
Absolutely not. So we wanted to have a little chat tonight, Cam, about editing. Well, you put in the rundown, so you want to have a bit of a chat about editing, but it's our show, so I guess we'll both talk about a little bit about editing.
You're in it now.
We don't talk a lot about editing on this show. We're more about the actual act of taking the photo and stuff like that. So, I mean, we do quite often take the mickey out of people who over-edit their photos, but rarely do we stop and talk about, well, how we edit, or what you should be striving for when you edit. It's an interesting thing, because taking the actual photo for me takes minutes. The editing process can take hours. So it's funny that we don't sort of talk about it as much as we probably should. In this day and age of digital and Photoshop and AI and things getting frankly out of control when it comes to AI, or when it comes to editing in general. So you've just had a few days out in the wilderness, as you just walked us through. You get back, you're sitting in front of your PC that needs coal shoveled into it to get it to turn over. Is there a process that you follow when you edit, or is it every image judged on its own merits? I mean, do you have a style? Do you think?
I think you and I and like I've known you for years, and I guess in the last few years we've become a bit closer with our photography as such because we're doing workshops and stuff together. But you and I are completely different photographers. We produce the same results, but we get there completely different ways, which I think is one of the beauties of photography. And I don't think there's too many people that you come across that shoot the same as someone else. There's always someone that's a little bit different or has their own little style. So I just did this walk, cut back. I had a few photos to go through. But I can tell you now, I edited about all those photos I sent you the other day, probably about 20 photos.
Yeah,
I had them edited.
20 odd.
I had them edited in about 30 minutes.
Yep.
And I didn't use presets or anything like that. So, but I like to, and I think it's important that we are having a good discussion about editing, because I think how you edit can definitely create your own style, which I think is important. But I think how you edit can also transpire back to how you shoot, and, trying to be a bit more consistent with your shooting. Because I know in the early days when I was editing, I'd almost edit every photo differently. It'd start off as the same sort of raw file, but because I was shooting a bit all over the place in the field, every raw file would come in a bit different. So I'd be like, oh, I just need a bit more exposure there, or oh, I didn't expose for the highlights there, I have to play around with them more, or I underexposed too much, I've got to bring the shadows up. So what I have sort of done in the last 5 years or so, 10 years maybe, is I find that because of how I like to edit and how I don't like to spend hours editing images, that has sort of transformed into how I shoot, and I shoot very consistently. So my settings are always very, very similar in regards to what I'm shooting. And it's just a tiny tweak of exposure value, give or take. And that's it. So when I bring my photos in, how I edit them are very similar. And I'm just really just editing for the light that caught my eye in each shot, or, what I was looking for. And I think that's sort of important, that people try to get to that point as quick as they can with their photography. But I think it's hard as well, because we all did. I used to do it. You would have done it. We all follow different photographers and see different things that we like, and especially this day and age when there's a plethora of options to see photos on. You look at one photo and go, "Oh, that's a great shot by Brendan. Oh, it's quite warm, and he's done this and he's done that. Okay, I'm going to edit to that sort of style." But then you look at my photo, which is snowy and early morning cool. Oh, okay. Well, that looks cool, but I'll cool my photos down, and all of a sudden you get this sort of zigzag effect of how you edit. Do you find that you edit consistently, or do you find that every one of your shots you're sort of playing on its merits each time?
I like to think it's shot to shot on its merits, but subconsciously it probably creeps into a consistent style or a consistent way of editing. And to your point of when you're out in the field and shooting, I think you're right. I think I almost reverse engineer my photos now in terms of I look at the I know what I'm capable of in the editing suite. So that actually helps me as a tool when I'm exposing a photo. Or I think what it also does is it allows me to focus, pardon the pun, a lot more heavily on composition, which is numero uno. It always is. Composition is always king. Always, people. No matter, don't listen to what anyone tells you. Composition is number one. Getting that composition right. So, as I say, because I do have just enough skill in Photoshop to be dangerous, and I use Photoshop, by the way. I don't use Lightroom. I only use Photoshop. I exclusively use Photoshop. Don't ask me why. That's just how it goes for me. It does free me up in the field, I think, to concentrate a lot more heavily on compositions. I also, to that extent, I'm also very, very capable, very, very aware of my camera's capabilities. In other words, staying within your camera's limitations. Case in point, when we did the 12 Apostle Sunset a few weeks ago on the tour, and here I was with just a 400mm, so effectively an 800mm lens on the OM system, pointing it exactly into a bright sun. But that was what I was after. That's what I wanted to do. And, knowing the limitations of my camera equipment, but also what I can do in an edit. Now, as it turned out, that photo it was basically straight out of camera. It worked fine as it was, but I keep that up my sleeve. The fact that I know that I might be able to save some shadows. I might be able to save some highlights, knowing not to clip highlights. And occasionally on the Down South Photo Show, Cameron and I will throw out terminology, probably not appreciating where our audience might be at. So when I say clip the highlights, Cameron, I just want to explain that.
Well, I was going to get you to go back a step further than that and clip and discuss when you said camera's limitations. So that, I think that ties in with your clipping of the highlights. So yeah.
So camera's limitations, generally for me at the moment, it's all about dynamic range. So how many stops of dynamic range I can play with and play within that. And that goes for photography from when photography was invented till now. Because if you throw your mind back to that wonderful interview we did with Ben Horn, and he talked about the stops of dynamic range he has to play with his film. And was it like 2 stops, maybe 3 that he had to play with?
Slide film is 5 stops of dynamic range.
Yeah. I seem to remember at one point he said some film he was shooting with that had 3 stops that he could play with.
If it's expired film or something like that, I think he said that.
Which is ridiculous. But
so when you say, so I think, again, just to dissect that a bit more to help people listening. Some people don't know what dynamic range is. Like some people go, what the hell is dynamic range?
In a nutshell, dynamic range is your camera's ability to see detail in highlights and shadows at the same time. Now, when I say at the same time, that includes being able to, in post-production, lift shadows and still see detail in there. So when we talk about, let's talk about highlights. So if you have an area, particularly a very, very bright area, for example, the photo behind me, if I just cover up my screen again, sorry for those listening to the pod, but there's a picture of some hay bales there. And the one on the right has a very, very bright face to it because it's facing the sun. Now, if you have a look there, you can still see detail in the straw, in the hay there. You can actually see the texture of the hay. Now, if you couldn't see that and that was just a white splodge, that's called clipping the highlights. And in fact, you could argue that the sky there has probably been clipped to save the face of the hay bale here. So when we say clipping the highlights, that means when you bring your highlights down, there's still no detail there. So you've literally blown your highlights, or as we call, clipped your highlights, and there's no data there. There's no information in that area at all.
So if you're taking a photograph and you take the photograph and you look at it and you go, okay, there's my photograph on the back of the camera, how the hell do you tell there and then if you've made a mistake with your highlights?
There are several ways you can do it. Number one is you can actually set your camera to, I think they call it marching ants, have a little outline that flashes, or some cameras, it changes color. It goes red if you've clipped that area of highlights. And we had a very interesting discussion about this when we shot the redwoods, because there was highlight clipping going on left, right, and center. Because we were working in an area where it was dark, but these amazing light rays coming through. So the dynamic range in there was massive. I mean, in some instances, you're probably working at up to maybe 11 stops of dynamic range. So you had to be careful. You had to be choosy on what do I want to expose for here, the highlights or the shadows? And, you know, in those kind of conditions, you can set your camera to show you. Quite often, though, I will literally zoom in on the photo. I do it all the time, particularly if I've got time. So if it's a landscape that's not moving and the conditions aren't changing overly rapidly, I will quite often pixel peep and just zoom up and have a look. And so, and you can, experienced photographers can tell pretty much straight away if they've clipped their highlights or what's the opposite of clipping highlights? Is it burning shadows, or do you clip your shadows? I've never called it clipping your shadows.
Maybe you're losing detail or losing I don't know. Shadow detail.
I don't know what it is.
I think it's still clipping either way.
Clipping, I guess I always relate to it with highlights. That's all.
Yeah. So you zoom in and have a look, and you look at for the marching ants. Something else that's really important that we do discuss a lot is that histogram. On the back of our camera. Which will show you pretty much the whole dynamic range of your shot. So from your darkest dark to your brightest bright, it'll give you a really good output or a really good reading of where that light's falling within the capability of the camera. So that's really important. But when you were saying about your little hay barrel there, like sometimes, you know, you're happy to sort of a classic example would be Peter Dombrovskis. He had a lot of shots where his highlights were clipped because he was working with such a small dynamic range of the medium of film he was using.
Yeah.
He had to sort of sacrifice something. So he was sacrificing sky because the foreground and everything in that middle ground was so important with the detail of shadows and all that kind of stuff. So when you're shooting, do you keep that in mind as well? Do you look at that hay barrel and go, well, not the hero of the shot, but the shot that's got a lot of interest in this bit is that bit of hay?
And in this case, it is the sky that's been blown out in order to maintain detail in the paddock and also on the hay bale there. So, and I hear what you're saying with Peter Dombrovskis' work because quite often I will look at some of his shots and in the back of your mind, it's like, well, that's overexposed, that part of the photo.
That's right.
I never say that. I always look at it and go, how much would he have loved what we can do now?
Yeah. Well, this is the thing. We are living in a world now where, we've gone from guys who, even Ken Duncan, who's still chopping around doing photos. Like he was working in negative film and slide film for years. These guys who, are in their later years of photography, really need to be applauded for how good they really are because the shots they were creating on a medium that's, a third of what we've got in capability, like some of the photos that you see out of those guys are still from the 60s and 70s or whatever, are still better than what you see today of the same locations. So
and
we really don't have an excuse not to be good.
The reason for that, Cam, is that when they were out taking photos, they were doing the math the whole time.
Yes, that's right.
The whole time. And we don't need to anymore. We're quite lucky in that
we don't need to, but should we?
Probably, but it would probably make us a better photographer, I suppose. But because we get instant feedback now, that's with digital. That's the big plus. So it's funny. Can I just touch on histograms for a second?
Yeah.
I must confess, I don't use the histogram anywhere near as much as I probably should. I am a much more of an eyeballer of the actual image itself. Sometimes I find the histogram a little bit distracting.
Okay.
If I'm constantly trying to get the exposure exactly right within the histogram, I'm not focused enough on the composition. So it can sometimes be okay if I'm tripod mounted and I'm not moving around too much. I've got my comp. I know what I'm shooting. Then I can use the histogram just to make 100% sure. But even then, 9 times out of 10, I'm just, as I say, I'm taking the photo, I'm eyeballing it, I'm looking, because we had this issue when we were shooting the redwoods with a few people. I don't know if I brought this up on the channel already or not. I think I did, but they had the preview screen and it was showing the highlighted area that was overexposed and it was showing it in red. Now, if you had 100% of your image, it looked like maybe 6 or 7% of the image was overexposed because it had that red highlight thing. And the person I was shooting with said, "Oh, I better delete that. It's not exposed correctly." And I said, "Don't you dare delete that entire image for the sake of 6 or 7% of it being overexposed." Because overall they loved the image, but they then went ahead and brought the exposure down, which changed the look and feel of the image in order just to get 6 or 7% back in correct exposure. So I found that a really interesting take on
I think
correct exposure.
I think that comes back to maybe it's a bit of miseducation out there about that histogram, and I think you're right. Like a lot of people don't either use the histogram because they don't understand it, or they don't use it because they're like, well, I just like the look of the image I got. I'm happy to go with it. But I think what gets a bit misconstrued is that people go, well, I can't have anything clipping. If anything's clipping, then when I take it into my editing suite and there's a blinky bit on my screen, that whole photo is ruined. Well, no, it's not. And I think a valuable thing to think about for your editing, because we're sort of still talking about editing, but when you're out shooting,
that's right. That's what this is all about.
We're talking about editing. when you're talking about shooting to make your editing all that easier, one of the major things I've learned over the years is just to make sure my exposure is exposing for the light that catches my eye. So your shot, it's a little bit of light on a hay barrel. My shot, it's the light on top of the mountain here, which had snow on it. And when I looked at my histogram after this shot, that little slip of snow was blinking. I'm like, there's no detail in that anyway. It's white. Right. It's getting hit by direct sunlight. But I want to make sure the rest of it's okay. if you spend all that time in your camera trying to get those clippings under control and, really just thinking that the histogram has to be perfect, well, that's probably not right either. You need to make sure that exposure for the light, like you said in the redwoods, you want that light coming through the trees. That's what we wanted. We want to be able to see a little bit of that sort of atmosphere in the light. That's all you really need to worry about with your exposure. So when you then come in to edit, you straight away go, well, I expose for that light, or I expose for the light on your hay barrel, or I expose for the light in the redwoods. And that's then what I edit to. I edit to that light. And a lot of the other stuff is still consistent. My contrast is consistent. My texture, dehaze, clarity, vignetting, all that kind of stuff is consistent through all my shots. It's purely just exposing then or reproducing that exposed light for the light that caught my eye in the scene.
Yep.
If you have really made a big mistake, for example, this mountain here, if I take it into Lightroom, I'm a Lightroomer. If I bring that in and the whole face of the mountain's blowing out and all that sky's all clipping and stuff like that, then I've made a mistake at the time. I haven't exposed for the light that's caught my eyes. I've let the camera do something it wants to do. So it's real important that when you are shooting, especially landscapes, that you expose in camera for the light you see to make your editing a lot easier to edit for that light you saw.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
And generally, it makes perfect sense. And generally, I've heard you say this many times: expose for the light that you see. And when you say that, what you're actually saying is expose for the light that is lighting the hero in your scene. I mean,
that's right. Yeah, the hero light.
Yeah, that's right. And because normally in a scene, go back to this one, it's obviously the hay bales are the heroes of the scene. So I immediately don't just focus the camera on that. I also set the exposure for that because that is the hero part of my composition. So it's not just exposing for the light you see, which is accurate. It's also by default that makes the main subject in your composition correctly exposed, or not even correctly exposed how you want to expose it is probably a better
that's
way
right.
to look
And
at
I think that's another great point you bring up is that, like, when you first start out with people on workshops and when you first yourself take up photography, all you want to do is get that needle in the middle of the exposure because that's
right.
perfect exposure. Well, it's not. No. That's what the camera is saying is the average exposure for that whole scene.
For the scene,
the camera doesn't see that amazing bit of light on the hay barrel or on the mountain or wherever you're shooting. The camera's got no idea that that's the hero of your shot. That's why you need to tell your camera to do a bit of that and adjust it accordingly. And that, I think, steps into making your editing a truckload easier because you're not trying to polish a turd off the get-go. You've already got a really good file to work with where the light that's caught your eye, the hero light, is exposed correctly. Then, like you said before, you've got all that time to set up your composition right and get it all right. So when you come in to edit, it really should be a fairly straightforward process of, I remember this shot. That's the light that I liked. That's what I exposed for. Composition I worked on. Bang, 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 bang. You're done. If you're majorly sliding things left and right all the way through a photo, it's probably got more to do with your technique of shooting than it is to your technique of editing. And that's where I think it's really important to get it right in camera, which is what we try and teach. Because it just saves you so much heartache later on.
Yeah, definitely does. There's something really cool about when you get your composition, but you get it amongst awesome light. That little marriage is and it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes you just hit that sweet spot when the comp's awesome, but the light's just as good. The light's matching it, and that's when you get an awesome photo. Is when the light's good and the composition's good as well. I think that's one of the things I love about photography is it's when the planets align, and it's a buzz. It's a cool feeling.
Yeah. So so you said you use Photoshop for editing.
Yes.
And then I use Lightroom. There's no right or wrong.
No.
I don't
and effectively they're the same thing. They just have different user interfaces.
That's right. They do the same thing, same adjustments. You pretty much got all the same sliders to work with. Lightroom obviously categorizes things and catalogs things for you where Photoshop just chucks it in as a single file or whatever it might do. Other editing softwares that are out there, you might know more about that than I, but there's a lot of the camera brand ones, isn't there? Like, the Canon editing or Sony editing or whatever it might be.
There's also Nik software that's out there.
Nik software,
There's a lot. There's a few free ones out there. There's look, the names escape me right now, but you could easily do a Google search for it. There are plenty of free editing software suites out there. And I must say, Can I diss Adobe for a little bit, please?
Sure. Let me just add that to the running sheet. We lose sponsorship from Adobe.
I'm not sure what's going on over at Adobe. I'm really not.
Right.
I'm fascinated by there seems to be every other day an update to Photoshop or Lightroom, and the amount of, I don't know, the way that they're trying to make it phenomenally easy to edit in terms of filters, in terms of presets, in terms of AI. It's almost like they're worried about people falling off the Adobe bandwagon.
Right.
And if you're listening, Adobe, drop your friggin' prices. For God's sake, you are too expensive. It's outrageous what they're charging now for software that you subscribe to now. You don't long gone are the days where you got a disc with the software on it. That's all you download it all.
Yeah, and a book about that thick on how to use it.
Yeah, and you've got to subscribe, and then I'm currently paying $85 a month for Photoshop for the Adobe.
So suite. you think they're introducing a lot more automated editing
heaps
bullshit just so people don't just keep going over the Topaz or Dick effect or whatever it is, whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a lot of that going on. It is. And I also their neural filters. Do you know about these, Cam?
No.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. It is. There is a lot of AI being used now. I run a Photoshop, as you guys. I run a Photoshop. That sounds wrong. I run a camera store.
Camera and Photoshop. Yep.
And we restore a lot of photos quite often. A lot of old wedding photos, a lot of old family photos, and that sort of stuff. And I use Photoshop to do it, and I use the neural filters a lot. They're great. They cost me $80 a month. They fail every second time that I use it. They crash, and it's getting worse. And I've got like souped up PCs and all high end stuff, and the filters will quite often crash and don't work, and it's janky.
Janky.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm just wanted to tee off at Adobe for a second there.
So what you're saying is editing, don't bother. Just don't worry about it.
Well, then maybe
shoot film. Be done with
that's right. Maybe we should all now. That's if you've got any questions about editing, please hit us up in the comments below.
We could go on forever about editing.
Well, of course we could, but that's just scratching the surface.
My little closing statement for editing, for those who are really wanting to try and get a bit better at their editing, is spend more time in your camera getting those details right, your light and your composition, like Brendan mentioned. Spend more time in the field doing that right, and less adjustments on your editing, and you'll start to see that little matrix come together, I reckon. And then from there, you'll start getting your own style and moving on. Like I said, if you're sliding things left to right, trying to match things and trying to fix things up, it's probably got less to do with your editing skills and more to do with your shooting skills. So just keep that in mind.
Yep. Here.
Yeah.
Fuji bringing film back. So after they decided that they wanted out, and I think from my mail, they wanted out because they could no longer afford to service their film processors anymore.
That's right. I remember saying that once.
Or get parts and all this sort of stuff to keep the silver halide process alive.
Yeah,
they've done a backflip. They've done a 180. They are now going to make Fujifilm all their films again in China. They've decided to build a factory in China to start making film. So this is interesting on a lot of fronts, particularly for me, because again, running a camera store, selling film and getting film processed for people, I'm quite hopeful and optimistic that it might see the price of film drop a wee bit now that there's a bit more film coming onto the market.
I accredit all this to the Pentax 17.
That's right.
That's that beautiful looking camera has changed the way we look at things.
Makes you wonder if these execs over at Nikon and Canon and these places are starting to go,
Here you go. I'm going to make a bombshell announcement. What are we on episode 126?
126.
By this time next year, 2 of the 3 major brands will have brought out a new film camera.
Okay.
I reckon Canon.
That's a pretty safe bet.
I reckon Canon and Nikon are going to bring one out. Sony won't touch it.
No,
But Canon and Nikon will have some spare parts lying around.
I wonder if like Yashica will come back, or Hanamex, or
Yeah.
one of those guys.
Like you said the other week, if OM Systems came
Oh,
out and made an OM1 film camera,
what an opportunity.
it'd be done and dusted.
What an opportunity they've got.
But I doubt they
right
will,
there.
because that's just not how they work. So
Yeah, it was interesting. It was just brought to my attention today that Fuji are going to
yeah.
be back with a vengeance. So that'll be interesting then to see if they follow up with film
Well,
processors.
I'm just reading here. Fuji said to resume color negative film production in China.
Okay.
The first films that are going into production will be the Fuji C200, which is like a standard, whatever, Superior, whatever it used to be.
I would have thought, yeah.
Yeah, 200 ISO, 400 ISO, which is being made. The company that's taking, I guess, over the licensee of this or whatever it is called Yes-Star. Yes-Star.
Yeah.
Which is known for making medical film. So they've
Okay.
obviously in the process of doing it.
So they've struck a
Yeah.
deal with Fuji basically to, all right, so this probably is not as good as it first sounded, because I would have hoped that at some point we get, Velvia coming back, and Sensia and all these lovely Fuji Chrome, that sort of stuff. So it's probably not going to happen down that path, but we'll see.
I think the day that things go back to where they should be in photography is the day they make Kodachrome again.
Mm-hmm.
So if they make Kodachrome again, we would have done a full 360 and come back to where we started from, I reckon.
It'll be interesting. There's clearly a market for it, and these companies now know that. And it's only taken them 10 years to look in the rearview mirror and go, oh, hang on a minute, people still dig film.
Did we ever think that film was just going to completely die? Like, I don't think I ever thought.
I did.
Yeah.
No,
I always thought there'd be something.
I thought film was cooked. Probably about 5 years ago. Well, maybe even during COVID, because Kodak in where are they? In New York. Oh, what's the name of the suburb in New York where they make Kodak? Doesn't matter. Anyway, they shut down their factory. They shut it down.
Yeah.
And they came out and said it'll actually cost them more money to fire it up than just to close the whole thing down. It's just, and that was a real worry. That was like, whoa, this could be the nail in the coffin of film.
Yeah.
But I suppose in the back of my mind, it was always the backyard, people someone will work out how to make film. It's not easy. I tell you, there is a brilliant YouTube clip at the channel called Smarter Every Day. They do a deep dive on what goes into making film, and it's really cool. So I'll probably link that in the description.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yes.
I always thought, because the only thing that gave me hope was vinyl. I thought vinyl's still around.
Yes.
And that's had that many resurgence of vinyl. Maybe we're going through the first sort of resurgence of film, perhaps. I'm not too sure.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that all ends up. But we shall see. If you are into shooting film, let us know. We like film. I like film cameras.
Yeah, we should do film-only workshops.
Oh. That would be an absolute bloody nightmare.
You reckon?
I suppose you technically could.
I use my film camera not much as I wanted to, but you know what? I stuffed up my first couple of shots because I just assumed it was auto everything. So I put up the thing and I didn't even focus it. I just looked through the viewfinder. It probably was focused, but I just looked through it and thought, oh yeah, it looks good. Bang. And then I went, oh, hang on. I've got to focus this. I've got to check everything.
Got to think about this.
The camera I've got, it's got like this multi-spot metering thing that averages out the exposure for you.
Oh.
So I had to do that. I'm like, right, I remember all this now. This is cool. I've actually got to think about it, and I've got to focus it. And I had to change the polarizing filter, and then I had to wind it on. I had to keep still at like 60th of a second. There's no image stabilizer, like it was cool. So,
yeah. There is a part of me as well that I love it when we get, a late teenage kid come in and they're like, hey, I found this camera at the local op shop. I don't know what to do with it. And then I show them and give them a very, very quick brief history on film and tell them what it's all about and how it works and how to load the camera and what you can and can't do with film and all this sort of stuff. They love it. Most people like the tactile nature of film.
It's tactile. That's what it is. Yeah.
No, it's very cool. I'm into it. I just wish it was cheaper, but it's not. Never mind. Cam, beer donations for this week.
Oh yeah, okay. We've got people have come back from the dead. We're here. Hey, shout out to Mel, who gave us a shout out. He wrote us a nice email about his shout out. A little shout out. Hey, man. We haven't done a shout out to Chelsea. Apparently, we don't shout out to her enough anymore.
Jeez. Can we say shout out again?
A shout out. She's high maintenance, Chelsea, with the shout outs. If I don't give her one now, I'm going to get a shout out, I reckon. Yes. We had Mel and Jenny C are back on the block. So thank you.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, Mel.
We'll get into that. Yeah. Appreciate it. But we haven't had a deer cam for a while. So I don't know what's going on there.
That's right.
Maybe
we're just too concise and we answer everyone's questions for them.
Maybe we just need to scrap it. Just come up with another one.
That's right. And I'm still going through the feedback that we received when I posed the question of whether we should make changes around here. So thank you very much for that.
Right.
Some of them will be implemented. Some of them might have already been very subtly, but there you go.
Are you going to tell me what those changes are, or are you just going to run with them?
What do you care?
What do I need to know for?
Now, Cam, you're hitting the road again next week. Are you having this week off, the week we're in now?
Yeah, so what are we? We're Wednesday today. Obviously comes out Friday. All this week off to let my feet recover. They're a bit bloody sore.
A bit tender.
How old are you? You're 51?
Yes.
51. Sorry to put it out there. I'm 45.
Sorry. I think it's common knowledge that I'm 51.
Yeah, it's so. I was talking to 5-star Dan today, and his wife just turned 40. And she's like, I still feel pretty good, Cam, for 40. And Dan's like, you're 40. The switch goes on. Everything hurts. And it wasn't until the other day walking. And then I went, geez, my ankles are knackered anyway, but geez, they're really sore at the moment. And then I almost did my knee. And I'm like, God, that's going to come back and bite me in the ass later on in the week. So this week is purely just trying to stay wrapped up in cotton wool and not do an injury or do anything stupid or get myself ready. But yeah, next week, I'm on the boat next Wednesday night. So we might have to record early next week. And I am then into Geelong, into a car, into Adelaide, into Flinders Ranges. This trip's going to be a bit of a different one. I've got 2 family members joining me.
Okay.
So father and brother have decided they want to come and check the Flinders Ranges out.
Yep.
So they're going to hang around for a few days while we're up there running a workshop and say g'day.
Fantastic.
Hopefully they behave themselves. Hopefully Noel doesn't get on the piss too much and make a fool of me.
Noel wouldn't do that to you.
I'm sure he wouldn't. So that's what I got going on.
It's actually your brother I'm more worried about, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, put them together. Unbelievable. Yeah. What about yourself? What have you got coming up?
Well, we're about to enter a wonderful time of the year called school holidays. So believe it or not, I'm one of these parents that love having the kids around. So it's good. We get to hang out with the kids for a couple of weeks. So that'll be good. And we generally get a bit busier around school holidays in Ocean Grove. So the shop will no doubt get busy. We're also hitting end of financial year, so I've got all that to take care of with the business. So that's all fun. Yeah, I'm sorry, didn't mean to bring it up, but
yeah, thank you.
It's
maybe my week isn't quiet.
That's right. Whether we like it or not, it's here, the end of the financial year. So happy new financial year, everyone. Photography wise, though, I still owe myself that trip out to Peterborough, which I didn't get to this week. But
yes, yeah.
Fingers crossed I can get out there next week or the week after. We shall see. And I have just recently been made aware that I am running a photography bus trip up at the Bright Festival of Photography. So I think I'll be
is that what that meeting was about?
That's right. Going to, speaking of, had a lovely meeting with the fantastic Nick Fletcher and the wonderful Charlie Brown a few nights ago to organise the Bright Festival of Photography and what we're going to be involved with up there.
Very cool that you're involved now. I like this.
Yeah, it is. Look, I mean, I think it was a no-brainer that, I mean, going last year was really me just going, okay, fine, I'll do it.
I know.
I just wanted to get a feel for it, So
you send them enough emails saying, please invite me, they're going to do it eventually.
Well, that's right. Yeah, for sure. So that's going to be exciting because for many reasons, not least of which is I get to be involved with the festival, but also I get to shoot in an area that I don't get to shoot in enough. And the high country of Victoria is goddamn underrated. It's such a beautiful part of the world.
I think that's another workshop we should do.
Yeah.
So once we've done maybe...
Add it to the list.
Once we've done maybe the Murray Mallee this year,
maybe we'll switch it out to the high country.
Rotate out to the high country. We'll do the Great Ocean Road. We'll rotate it into something else. And
the Grampians.
The The Grampians, yeah. So the high country is cool. It's a cool spot.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's big. There's a lot to see up there. So, sometime in the next month, I'll be heading up there to check out what we're going to be doing for the festival. So that'll be cool.
So you're driving a bus?
No,
you're just in the bus.
We're in the bus, yeah. So it's going to be. I don't know how much I can say yet because not a lot's finalized. But
I'm sure Nick won't mind. He loves surprises and leaks and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, it'll be. Everyone will see. Anyone who's going to the Bright Festival of Photography, and if you haven't already got your tickets, head over to their website and get a ticket. Jump on board, and come and say g'day. That'll be cool.
Yeah.
Cam will be there. I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it.
That's
not until October. I think it's the second weekend in October. So
11 to 13.
11, 12, and 13 of October. That is correct.
So what we haven't mentioned though, quickly as we wrap up this show, which is not my job but yours, but we have some workshops you and I are running. We've just released some single day workshops in January.
Correct.
So for those who have listened this far, we're doing our little Bellarine Peninsula, Point Lonsdale, Ocean Grove.
This is the most fun you'll have in an afternoon or a day of a workshop. We love doing this one.
We'll even supply the big elephant seal if you like.
Yeah, that's right. That's turning the clock back.
January 17 and January 18, single day ones. So I think we start them at 2:00 till sunset.
And it's daylight savings. So we start it just after lunch, and we push it right through till sunset. Which at that time of year we're normally out until about 9 o'clock. So it's quite cool. It's a big day, and it's good fun. We get to go to my backyard, all the awesome locations on the Bellarine. We will take you there. It's self-drive, so you will meet us there, and we'll teach you how to shoot it, I guess.
So we've got 10 spots each on those workshops. They're already selling. So jump over to dsps.com.au.
Oh, look at him go!
Look at me. Maybe that's the change in the show. Maybe I'm the new host.
That's right.
As my head wobbles off the screen. So check them out. Then we've also got the Murray Mallee workshop in March, which we'd love to get some people to come along with, because that's that's an awesome part of the world to go practice your shooting and editing.
Yes, and that is already selling. We've had a place or two filled up on that one already, so that's good.
Yep. And then back down to Tassie in May for the East Coast Bay of Fires. That's a cool trip as well. So they're all on the website. There's a few more as well. To Great Ocean Road, Tarkine, you name it, they're there. So get on board, pretty much.
dsps.com.au. Cam, thanks for tuning in. No, thanks for being part of episode off the rails again. This has been episode 126 of the Down South Photo Show. We will see you for episode 127. All done, Mr. Blake?
I believe so. Unless you want to stuff something else up.
We will see you for episode 127 next week. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.